Hello everyone, I'm so excited today to be talking about the beautiful state of Alaska. My wife and I just went there over winter time in December. We got to spend a little over a week there. While we were there, we got to do a lot of amazing things such as dog sledding, snowmobiling. We got to see the northern lights and a lot of moose encounters as well. So in this video, we're going to be talking about some tips for traveling to Alaska during the winter time. So stay tuned. So the first tip I would say is clothing. Make sure you definitely bring the proper clothes. It's obviously wintertime, it can get extremely cold there. We saw it in the negative 40 degrees a couple nights while we were out looking for the aurora. So definitely bring the proper clothing. What we did and what I would recommend is bring your own base layer. Make sure it's some kind of wool material, shirts, pants, socks, and everything. But we rented all the heavy duty stuff from Alaska Outdoor Gear. They had a package, it's their extreme cold package. It was rated for well below negative 40, but that's what we used, and it definitely kept us warm and kept us safe when it got down that cold. So definitely make sure you bring your own proper gear and plan accordingly for that. Tip number 2 is renting a vehicle while you're in Alaska. While we were in Fairbanks, we rented a car. It's not a problem driving around in Fairbanks. We had no issues at all. And also, while you're thinking about renting a vehicle, rent a all-wheel drive or a 4x4. That's going to come in handy if it did have some kind of adverse conditions. We actually were there at the tail end of the worst ice storm of the season, so we definitely needed to have that 4-wheel drive to get around. We had a Ford Explorer and did not have any issues. You're going to want to travel around and see different things. You're not going to want to stay in Fairbanks itself. We went to Chena Hot Springs, had an amazing time there, and just exploring the surrounding areas and seeing the beauty of Alaska, not just in the city, but all around. So, adding along with the vehicle is tip number 3, bring supplies in your vehicle. You're going to be traveling around, and most of the time the conditions of the roads are going to be really good. However, you could have some kind of adverse weather and get stranded somewhere, whether you slid off the road or something happens where you couldn't get around. It's very wise to have supplies with you. Food, water, extra clothing, some way to start a fire. Just have extra supplies and plan accordingly for that when you do travel around. Like I said, if you go to Chena Hot Springs or some other place just traveling, have something with you, especially if you're traveling at night. It gets really cold there. We saw negative 40 degrees at one point, so definitely have some kind of supplies with you so you can stay safe and stay alive just in case something was to happen. Tip number 4 is respect the wildlife while you're there, especially if you see a moose. There's a lot of wildlife, and there's also a lot of moose up in Alaska. We saw so many, it's ridiculous. Part of that was because of that worst ice storm of the season. So we saw so many of them. It was a great time to see them and everything, but be respectful of those animals. They are very large animals, and they're pretty territorial, especially the females that they have an offspring with them. They will protect them and charge you. So obviously you want to get a picture of them, but do it at a safe distance. Don't try to get up on them and take a picture. They won't like that, and they could severely hurt you or even kill you. So definitely look out for that. Give the animals some distance and space, but get your picture if you can, but at a safe distance. The next tip would be to plan your activities accordingly. Daylight there in wintertime is very scarce. You're only going to have about 5 hours of daylight, roughly from 10 to 3. So you need to have everything planned out and ahead of time so you have the daylight to do those activities, whether it's dog sledding, snowmobiling, or whatever you want to do. Make sure you plan it within those times. Check it before you leave and plan out your flight, that you don't have something scheduled too late in the evening, because daylight is only from like 10 to 3, and then after that it gets pretty dark quickly. The sun never really gets that high in the sky. It just kind of goes over the horizon just a few feet. So definitely plan your activities accordingly on that. And this brings us into our next tip, tip number 6, plan to see the aurora. Like we just said, it's going to be nighttime primarily while you're there, so definitely plan to see the aurora. There's a great app called My Aurora Forecast, which helps predict when you have a better odds of seeing it. And if it's a clear night, just look up in the sky. I didn't know this, and my wife didn't know this, but generally you can't see the colors of the aurora with your naked eye. You have to use a camera or something to see it. If you look up and you see kind of a light white milky color, it looks similar to a cloud, most likely that would be the aurora. So get your camera out and have a long exposure, and you will most likely be able to capture that. Definitely plan on seeing that. So these are my tips for traveling to Alaska during winter time. It is an amazing experience. I definitely recommend anybody going, but plan accordingly. I hope these tips really do help you. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe. See you on the next one.